It has been 6 months and 12 days since Core 1 of Bleach's 1000 Year Blood War arc anime had ended. For Core 2, we return on Bleach Saturdays with the release of episode 14. This week, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on episode 14, which is titled The Last 9 Days, which picks up from where we had left off following the post-credit scene of episode 13. This, of course, is where Uryu appears before YHWACH, who refers to him as his son, and that they will now be fighting together. This episode adapts materials from chapters 543 to 546, so in total, we have 4 chapters worth of manga material adapted into this week's episode. This appears to be consistent with following a similar pacing to Core 1, which typically had adapted 4.5 to 5 chapters per episode. Now, the material in this week's episode is void of any combat, and it is mostly dialogue heavy material from some very interesting chapters. We know from Core 1 that it is easy to get through a lot of chapters in any given episode if they were battle heavy, but the dialogue heavy chapters do slow down the pacing. So I'm looking forward to seeing just what dialogue has been kept intact and what has been cut from the episode, and lastly what their approach will be towards handling some comedic moments which were mostly cut from Core 1. Now, first things first, we begin Core 2 with an all-new anime exclusive birth sequence for YHWACH's character. We see sperm rushing towards an egg as we then see it fertilize and begin cell division. This eventually leads to a fully formed baby which is represented in black, which we then see being held by its mother. This is followed by the baby being propped up by several hands, which hints at how YHWACH was worshipped when he was an infant. More and more hands propel him into the sky as we see him at the top of what appears to be a mountain. We see a crowd of hands surrounding the baby, and if you look closely, the hands have a blue light within them that must represent the Quincy powers that he was able to bestow upon all of these different people, which are represented by these hands. And upon having these powers returned back to him, the baby would eventually grow stronger and stronger, and this is also represented in the added scene. The visuals here are absolutely amazing, with the sinister music, the dark tone, and the hints of something evil going on. And what I love the most about this added scene in particular is the YHWACH chanting in the background. The baby ends up gathering the energy from the different hands, and the energy is represented by these red strings that leave the fingertips of the hands. The red energy gathers within the baby as it eventually grows. We see different phases of the developmental growth of this baby into an adolescent, and then to a young adult who is reminiscent of Tensai Zangetsu's image, which then ends up morphing into the present day YHWACH before the opening begins to play. Well, if this intro sequence has done anything, then it proves that the Soul King was in fact clapping cheeks, and YHWACH does in fact have a mother as well as a father. We know that his father is the Soul King, but who on earth is the mother? Was she some sort of ethereal being who had also existed at the time of the Soul King, who had ended up giving birth to YHWACH? Why is it that the mother is colored in blue? Is it that some of her powers were the origin of the Quincy powers? It is fascinating as the baby is represented in black while the umbilical cord is bright blue, and the blue, of course, in my head I just think of Quincy abilities or Quincy reishi. So this added scene does make you think and question the origins of YHWACH, as well as raising a lot of questions about the Soul King. But hopefully we'll have some of these revealed in more added scenes involving the Soul King's character as we continue on with Core 2. Following this introductory anime exclusive scene, we have the all new opening for Core 2, which I want to share my thoughts on, to be honest. Now, the song that features within this opening is titled Stars, and it's sang by the 3-member rock band WOD. This opening is very different from the Core 1 opening, as we begin with this scene of Ichigo in his Shinigami attire as he runs, and it transforms into him wearing a hoodie and sweatpants, and it takes us to a parallel world, where apparently all of the Bleach characters are dressed up in drip, and various different articles of clothing from the human world. If you want my opinion, this intro feels like a sports anime. You've got the characters playing basketball, you got hints at Ichigo and Uryu being close friends, but then Uryu's character takes a sudden turn when he ends up being hired by this evil mafioso criminal, who's apparently YHWACH, who is just dangling off of this helicopter, offering his hand out for Uryu to join him. But Ichigo is like, no bro, you're not going with him, because apparently Uryu is being taken away from Ichigo's basketball team and is ruining their chances to play at the playoffs. Jokes aside, the intro does look cool, I suppose, and it is really just jarring in my opinion. I do think that it's going to grow on me over the course of the 13 episodes of Core 2. Throughout the intro, there's this heavy emphasis placed upon Ichigo and Uryu, and how they are eventually going to have some sort of a big battle during this core of the anime. I mean, there's this goofy scene where both of them grab instruments at the end of the opening. Ichigo has this double electric guitar with Uryu with a violin, and eventually their clothing does transform into their normal attire as they end up clashing. I have to admit, I've always enjoyed seeing the Shinigami wearing normal clothing, and now now seeing the Sternritter dressed up in some stylish drip was also fun to see. I just don't know, for an anime about a massive war, the tone of the opening just seems really off to me. We see Soifon picking out record albums, followed by the Bambis in the karaoke booth with shots of Bazz-B playing basketball, and Shunsui and Kinpachi drinking at a bar as they're being served by Nanao. I'd love to know all of your thoughts about this very strange opening, and if you agree with my sentiment that it's quite jarring and it's going to take a bit of time to get used to. And the last thing that I've got to say is that I just personally really love the fact that you get to see YHWACH on a helicopter coming to grab Uryu, and Ichigo is like, no you don't bro, and he throws him off of a building. So following the intro, we have another anime only sequence where ICHIBE is speaking to Ichigo about the damage that the Soul Society has sustained, as he calls the Shinigami pathetic and how 1,000 years of peace have made them weak. Now Ichigo notes how Squad Zero had done nothing to help the Shinigami, but ICHIBE reminds them that their duty is to just watch over the Seirete. But he also says that another one of their duties is to train the Shinigami, and he warns Ichigo that the Quincy are going to come back, and when Ichigo tries to leave just to get a head start back to the Soul Society, ICHIBE tells him that he won't be able to beat YHWACH in his current state, which is fairly true to be honest. Following this, we cut to the Sternritter meeting with YHWACH stating that he has news to share with his subordinates who have all gathered. He ends up revealing to everyone that Uryu, the last surviving Quincy, has been appointed as his successor, much to the shock and surprise of the other Sternritter. I really do love the operatic music that is playing during this scene. It is just so impactful and it dramatically reintroduces us to YHWACH and the Sternritter. Now following this, we immediately get the infamous Bambietta relief scene. Now the order of events is slightly different here, but she takes one of her subordinates from the crowd who are attending the Sternritter meeting, ordering him to follow her to her room for relief. She instantly ends up killing him, as we don't spend too much time on this scene in particular, and unfortunately this isn't one of those scenes that is going to be extended, but I guess all of you can hope for an extended edition in the Blu-ray release in 6 to 9 months time. Now a lot of people did think that this scene was going to be cut from the episode, similar to how Rukia's Peach scene was cut from Core 1, but thankfully they had left this scene intact, with Bambietta zipping up her clothes before the Bambis arrive and they complain about how much of a mess she has made again. This scene here is streamlined in comparison to the manga, as the only one who really makes comments is Candice, as she informs Bambietta that Bazz-B is making a scene about Uryu being appointed as the successor. Bazz-B of course is really frustrated with YHWACH's decision, as he comments on how some guy that they don't even know has ended up taking up such an important position. He appears to be venting to the other Sternritter. Now in the manga there were a few Sternritter present with him, but in the anime they have extended it and included the Bambis as well as Bambietta in this scene. The Bambis also make some comments which are some nice additions that are being made to this episode, as you can see that they are actively including their characters more and giving them a bit more of a role in comparison to the manga, with Giselle even recommending to Candice that she should make a move on Uryu considering he's going to be YHWACH's successor. Now in the manga, Bazz-B actually storms off and leaves the Sternritter, and he is then confronted by YHWACH, but in the anime YHWACH appears before the Sternritter and the two of them argue in front of everybody. Bazz-B wonders why YHWACH doesn't have a problem with Uryu considering that he was supposed to have been YHWACH's successor. Most of the Sternritter would have been fine if he had taken up the role, but why is it that YHWACH is okay just letting some nobody turn up and take his position? YHWACH states that YHWACH has made his decision and that there is no room to question it. Bazz-B appears to be understandably disappointed, calling him a letdown, as he then challenges him for his seat, because if he is going to just give it up to Uryu, then Bazz-B will be more than happy to take the seat from him. Similar to the manga, their tense encounter is interrupted by Askin, who reminds them that YHWACH doesn't like conflict. He tells them that nothing good can come from them two fighting, as he states that YHWACH must already know this, as he refers to him as their next emperor. Now here, he cleverly reveals that he too doesn't accept Uryu, and he would be fine with YHWACH taking up YHWACH's position. Now here we see Uryu kneel before YHWACH, who appears to have wounded his hand in order to gather up some blood for Uryu to drink. In the manga, Uryu questions why he is YHWACH's successor after he drinks his blood and completes the ritual, but in the anime he questions why is he his successor before he even drinks the blood and the ritual starts. This appears to make a lot more sense, to be honest, in terms of continuity, and they were even able to slip in an anime only scene here of Uryu visiting a graveyard where he pays respects to his late mother. The visuals here are absolutely amazing, and Taguchi and the team have really outdone themselves in each of these additional scenes that they are making, with the different effects on screen and the way that CG assets are seamlessly blending in with the 2D art. This massive graveyard appears to have been made by the Quincy, and it's to represent possibly all of the mixed first-blooded Quincy who had died 9 years ago during Ashwaubenon. Now Uryu explains his reasoning for joining YHWACH's army a bit better within the anime, because in the manga things are left quite vague and mysterious, and it's stated that Uryu is the last survivor, and he is special because he possesses some kind of power that exceeds YHWACH's. But in the anime we learn that Uryu understands that the Quincy and Shinigami can never get along. After Uryu understands the reasoning as to why he has been appointed his successor, he drinks YHWACH's blood in this amazing anime-only sequence. And I love the added touch that YHWACH's blood is still on Uryu's bottom lip, as he learns that he has a shrift that's been bestowed upon him, and it's the same letter as YHWACH's, the letter A. Now following the midpoint of the episode, events are kind of changed around here, as we go to Hueco Mundo as we catch up with what Orihime and the others are doing. Urahara is seen to be examining Kyuuge's medallion, as he states that this is going to take a bit more time than he had expected. Orihime has made it to the Nagal ruins with Chad, and Urahara had given them a flying creature called Pero who has accompanied them to the ruins, and they're going there as a form of training. This scene is slightly altered from the manga just to streamline the events here, as we see that somebody else is accompanying both Chad and Orihime, and he stood to the side, as Orihime wonders how Ichigo is doing. Now we have our second anime only scene involving Ichigo training with ICHIBE here, and here we see his back muscles after he takes off his coat. This scene involves ICHIBE telling Ichigo that he cannot defeat YHWACH in his current state, and in order to defeat him he needs to surpass the state of a Shinigami, which Ichigo is more than happy to do. What is strange here is that ICHIBE tells Ichigo that he can hone his skills as much as he wants to, but he'll still remain a Shinigami. It appears as though ICHIBE wants to transform Ichigo into something else. He appears to be wielding a wooden stick as ICHIBE then begins his training. He is taken to a sacred place that nobody else is allowed to enter without the permission of the Soul King. Apparently ICHIBE wants to test Ichigo out whether if he is worthy enough to surpass the state of a Shinigami. Now this is really interesting, and it makes a lot more sense as to why Shunsui had visited the human world later on in the episode. In the manga things were ambiguous, and he had suddenly visited Ichigo's friends and given them soul tickets out of nowhere. I believe that the way that the scenes have been handled within the anime have helped to flesh them out, and these additional training scenes with ICHIBE were desperately needed in the manga in my opinion, and I'm so glad that we're finally getting them here. Shunsui is suspicious of ICHIBE's intentions, as he wonders how Ichigo is doing, and whether if ICHIBE is acting in the best interest of the Soul Society, as he admits that ICHIBE is a cunning individual, and this is the first hint that the monk who calls the name isn't all that he appears to be. And I love that they are dropping hints about his character subtly this early on in the story, as a lot of the information about ICHIBE isn't revealed even within the actual manga. Most of the stuff involving his character is revealed all the way in the Can't Fear Unworld light novels, and from the way that they're including details into the story, it is evident that after Core 4 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime, they hopefully are going to go and adapt Can't Fear Unworld into its own anime season. Following this, we get a comedic scene between Shinji and Hiyori, and to be honest, I thought that this was going to be cut from the anime. And here he's pleading with her for help, much to her annoyance. She ends up receiving a package from the Soul Society, as she appears to have been tasked with fixing the distortion between the world of the living and the Soul Society. She appears to be wielding a paint roller, and she is reluctant to get started as she tries to rope the other Vizards into helping her. Now we finally get to catch up with the Shinigami as we see Rukia and Renji training. Rukia ends up receiving a call from Kurinji stating that Byakuya has been healed. Kurinji speaks with Byakuya, informing him that he is the first person to have bathed in his hot springs for that long. He asks if he is feeling lightheaded at all, but Byakuya says that he doesn't need to worry about him, as we finally see him for the first time following his defeat against Aznod when he had told Ichigo to protect the Soul Society in episode 7. So I love the fact that we get to see Byakuya back in action, as he tells Kurinji that he resolves to get stronger now. Now when we cut back to Renji and Rukia, the scene here is streamlined in comparison to the manga, as a lot of their discussion about Senjumaru's palace from the manga is totally cut out here. Ichibe then appears and states that they have made some solid progress since they had first appeared within his palace, because when they had first turned up they could barely move or breathe, and I love the fact that the anime here shows us what Ichibe is talking about. It's just such a nice addition that helps you to just visualize everything. Following this, Ichibe states that it's time for the two of them to begin the final stages of their training with him. Now I honestly thought that this was going to be cut from the episode, but I love the fact that they have kept it in. But we finally catch up with Ichigo's friends from the world of the living. We see Keigo, Tatsuki and Mizuhiro as they are walking home from school wondering where on earth Ichigo is. They are then approached by Shunsui, who Mizuhiro recognizes following the aftermath of the Aizen battle. He reveals that he has come to speak to them about saying goodbye to Ichigo, and this of course is in reference to what he was speaking to Nanao about in that earlier anime only scene where he had stated that he was suspicious of Ichibe's intentions. Now this makes so much more sense in the anime, anime, and I love the fact that they've made that change, which just added a bit more context to this scene, so it didn't feel like it was out of the blue like it was within the manga. Keigo is obviously angered by Shunsui's delivery of these words, but Shunsui tells him that Ichigo is currently in the Soul Society trying to protect it, and that he is in a special place within the Soul Society at the moment, and he reassures them that most likely he is going to come back safely, but he is concerned about the power that he is going to return with. Shunsui goes on to reveal that depending on the power that he gains, it may end up affecting the stability of the world of the living, and if this is the case, then they cannot allow Ichigo to return to Karakura Town. Keigo's outburst is incredible here, and it's such a nice way to add some depth and nuance to his character, because aside from being a class clown, he really does care a lot for Ichigo, as he argues about him being trapped within the Soul Society, which is just really convenient for the Shinigami who seem to rely on Ichigo so much. Mizuhiro is quite mature and level-headed about this entire situation, as he asks about the probability of this happening, to which Shunsui states that it's 1 in 10,000 or even less than that. Shunsui is only informing them of the worst case scenario, and this is why he has made the effort to come and to tell them, because he doesn't want Ichigo's friends to be left in the dark. He then hands over to them 3 soul tickets, which will allow them entry into the Soul Society. This of course is on the off chance if Ichigo is in fact unable to leave the Soul Society and he is stuck there forever. Returning to Huecomundo, we see Chad and Orihime training at the Nagal ruins, as Orihime comments on how peaceful everything is, but Chad reminds her that they are training for a battle, as she points out that the humans in Huecomundo are helping the Arancars. And then we get this brief scene during Orihime's speech about everybody working together and being friends, as we see the Fullbringers, Riruka and Yukio appearing before Urahara. Now it's hard to tell them apart, but if you know their outfits, then you can tell that this is them. But yeah, Orihime is just glad that everybody is fighting on the same team here. She says that if everyone had helped one another and had respected each other's worlds, then this battle between the Quincy and the Shinigami would have never happened in the first place. Meanwhile, in the Serete, Taguchi and the team have outdone themselves, as we have this incredibly amazing visual of the Serete being engulfed by the Quincy Shadow Realm, as the Serete disappears and in its place is the Quincy City. My goodness, I love how this transition happens, from all of the CG elements to how the sky changes color, how the shadows rip apart the Serete in order to bring to life this brand new frozen landscape. In the center of the Quincy City, of course, is Yhwach's castle Silburn, and of course we see Yuha with Hashwad and Uryu standing there. The anime has really blown it out of the park with this scene in particular. I'm just really impressed with how this was executed overall. Now the episode ends with Yhwach speaking to Uryu about the Quincy Emperor song, as he reveals the final verse of it. He says that the sealed Quincy king would regain his pulse in 900 years, his mind after 90 years, his strength after 9 years, and he would take over the world in 9 days. Yhwach then tells Hashwad and Uryu that this is the last 9 days of the world. While he is saying the Emperor's song, we have additional scenes of these Sternritters marching for war, as they are ready to begin their second attack upon the Soul Society, and this time they're going to defeat them once and for all. After the episode title card, which appears right at the end before the ending song, we cut to the all new ending for Core 2, and it's a song called End Roll, and it's sang by Yo Kamiyama. The ending begins with this Quincy cross in the center of a black void, and as with all of the other things within Core 2, it is all themed after the Sternritter and the Quincy. You saw how the logo for Bleach had appeared on screen with a blue background. This is in stark contrast to the first season, where the Bleach logo had appeared with a pink background which symbolized the Shinigami. So this core is focusing more on the Sternritter and the Quincy, as well as Uryu's battle against Ichigo, which is inevitably going to happen towards the end of this core. The ending features some excellent visuals of the different Sternritter, as we see sketches of Nyanzel, Weasel, Hashwad and Mask in the background there. To be honest, I don't have much to say about the ending song. The visuals are fine, to be honest, and the ending song is quite upbeat in comparison to the mellow song for Core 1. Now, this episode didn't have a post-credit scene following the ending, but we do know that episode 15 is titled Peace from the Shadows, and it will be very battle-centric, as will all of the rest of the episodes of Core 2 will be, in comparison to episode 14. Now, there is quite a lot to dive into when it comes to the changes that the anime has had in comparison to the manga, as there were a lot of streamlined scenes, some cuts in comparison to the manga, and the order of scenes in which they had appeared within the anime were different to how they had appeared within the manga. The pacing is undeniably fast, as we went through quite a lot of material in this episode, and I'm looking forward to discussing what details were omitted and included in my manga vs anime video, which I'm going to be posting tomorrow, so definitely look forward to that. What were all of your thoughts for episode 14 titled The Last 9 Days? Did you enjoy seeing a closer look into the Sternritter, seeing their reactions to Uryu being made Yhwach's successor? Are you glad that they left the Bambietta relief scene intact within this episode. Also, what were your thoughts on the YHWACH birth sequence at the very beginning of the episode? And not to mention these added scenes involving ICHIBE training ICHIGO. And lastly, are you hyped for next week's episode where we're finally going to see BG9 versus Soifon, and I'm hearing some rumors that certain aspects of their fight involving Omaida will be extended within the episode. As always, please do be sure to stick around to the channel because I'll be back tomorrow with an in-depth manga versus anime comparison of this week's episode. So definitely be sure to subscribe and stick around for that. Now finally, thanks for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach video.
If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.